Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon session of Higher Education Seat at the Table, Defining Ethical Artificial Intelligence. I am Dr. Linda Asher, the moderator and session chair. I am the co-editor of one of the sponsoring journals, the International Journal of Open Educational Resources. I am also an associate professor in the business school at American Public University. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Terry Smith. Before we get started, let me remind everyone, although I think you probably know the drill by now, to make sure your microphones are on mute to prevent any extraneous noise. Also, we will have a Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Please put questions that you might have in the chat. If you could hold them until the end or put them as you think of them, and I will try to pick them up as we go so that we can talk about them at the end of the session. So let me introduce Dr. Smith. Dr. Terry Smith has more than 20 years of experience in education, and she's currently a full-time technology faculty member at a private college preparatory school in South Carolina, where she instructs high school graphic design while simultaneously supporting school-wide technology database and configuration management. She is responsible for developing the high school curriculum, AI in the World, addressing the practical use, understanding, and implementation of artificial intelligence. Additionally, Dr. Smith is a part-time instructor at American Public University and the School of Arts, Humanities, and Education. Her extensive education includes a master's degree in teaching and an MBA at IT management. She earned her doctorate in education from Regent University, where she was awarded Distinguished Commencement Speaker and SOE Outstanding Graduate. She also holds teaching and administrative licenses in multiple states, subjects and grade levels, as well as higher education leadership. Her research areas include technology use within non-technology disciplines and populations, creativity expansion with technology use, artificial intelligence for the non-technical consumer, and dislocated military students' reliance on technology. So as you can see, she brings us a wealth of knowledge for her topic today. Dr. Smith, welcome, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Linda. That was really kind. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I hope to share a little bit of my research. And I've titled it Higher Education Seat at the Table, hopefully to have that roundtable discussion where we're included in that discussion for defining ethical artificial intelligence, for being part of the definition as well as part of the discussion surrounding it. So I'll go ahead and just jump right in. I am having a little technical difficulties, and you'll see that I will not be in traditional slide mode, but I'll go ahead and toggle through the slides individually. So as I started thinking through the backdrop of ethical artificial intelligence, I started thinking about whether or not these words were understood by everybody. And it came to the conclusion that we in higher ed can't really assume that the words ethical AI are understood or applied evenly. I really believe that most folks see the word ethical and see the word AI and struggle with a full understanding of that. I think the best of us do. And so the language is incredibly complex. So I had lots of folks asking me questions about how to define ethical AI. So the first thing I thought is there a holistic definition of ethical AI? Do all of the different disciplines such as medical ethics, business ethics, research ethics, do they have some kind of consistent application for what ethical AI is defined and how we can understand it? I was really curious in this backdrop of thinking of whether or not there was terminology that we all understood, if there was shared meaning, and also if there was a concern. Are other folks out there wondering about gosh, do we have a shared understanding of what ethics are in AI? And then I thought, well, if there are shared language and there is a clear definition, perhaps maybe we're just stuck on semantics. Maybe there are particular words that we need to clarify or hone in on or pivot to. So I thought this as my backdrop as I began my problem and my research. And I decided that there are a lot of folks that can benefit from this, particularly in higher ed, as the administrators craft guidance to help all of us, including faculty and students, really to understand what ethical AI is, how we're going to apply it, how we're going to have our students use it, what are the boundaries. I thought about curriculum developers, and as they're embedding modules, perhaps, or lessons or understanding about both AI and ethics into the curriculum, perhaps this might be beneficial to them as well. I also thought, being an education instructor, our teacher candidates, I feel oftentimes that in education, particularly in higher education, we are the pebble that you throw into the lake. And from that, all the ripples come out of that. We touch so many areas. And particularly with teacher candidates, we send them into K-12 classrooms, and we want them to be prepared with the very difficult question of what's ethical AI? Not just what's AI, but what's ethical AI? Some of our graduates, as well as from other disciplines, they don't go into the classroom, they go into the workforce. How will they take that information with them and into the workspaces? So I really grappled with this as the background, as thinking through how do we define ethical AI, and is it already something we can discern from what's around us? These are the three questions I started with, and I really used a thought of the average consumer. The average consumer to me is someone with no technical training, no specialty skills. They're a non-academic. They're certainly not a professor of artificial intelligence or technology. They're certainly not a professor of, say, philosophy. An average consumer is someone who's using AI and ChatGPT and puts in questions and maybe doesn't have a full grasp or understanding of where it came from or anything about it, but they use it. And I thought about, if they were to go out and look for information on what was ethical, would they be able to find documentation that could give them that clear information? So the very first question I wanted to look at was not just news articles, not just what the tech industry possibly says or what maybe an academic says, but are there organizations out there, high-level organizations of influence, that articulate what ethical AI is through shared terminology? I wanted to know if ethical AI was a predominant concern of organizations of influence. Was this something anybody was thinking about? And was that discernible from the organizations that we can look at their documentation? I also wanted to know if we could consolidate a definition of ethical AI, and if that was discernible from the actual publications out there from organizations of influence. And organizations of influence, for me, I'll talk a little bit about what that is. As I parse through information, I believe that organizations of influence are those that have an international connection. And there are several components that I looked at for that. I also remember, I'm always coming back to the lens of the regular consumer, a non-academic and a non-specialist. All right, so to understand myself more about AI and ethics, as these two very interesting concepts are married, I went to the research, and I found a whole bunch of interesting things. And one of the first things that I will humbly admit, when I started looking into AI, I am a non-technical academic, and I was surprised to find out that it's been around for 50 years. And for me, it seems like it's been around for 5 minutes. So I thought, well, even as an academic, I still feel like it's come on like a freight train and there's so much information. So I really wanted to know, well, if I feel that way, perhaps the average consumer does too. And as I started looking at the research, I see these different kind of key moments in time. I see 50 years of experience with AI, particularly those specialists in that area. I see that they've celebrated it and they've had some 50-year anniversary to this, and that there's a celebration. And in the meantime, there's this decades of tech investment. So for those expertise in the field, they're really diving into this, they're looking into us. But the average consumer, or even someone, myself, for example, isn't really on the scene for understanding what AI is till roughly about 2016. And I think the gaming industry sees it a little sooner than maybe other industries, and your average consumer that maybe is more involved in gaming, perhaps. When Lee Sedol lost the International Go Championship to an AI, that was a pretty pivotal moment. So I think for individuals who were deeply entrenched in perhaps the gaming community may have thought, oh wow, AI, look at this, it's on the scene. Now you see more of the public involved. But quite frankly, it's not until 2022 with ChatGPT where we see that just about everyone from the age of 2 and up can say the words artificial intelligence. And of course, even this year, we've seen just exponential growth with Gemini, Copilot, and so many others. So it has come on us very, very fast for those of us who are maybe not artificial intelligence experts, not computer science experts. And for the average consumer, of course, it's a great product they can just use, but they really don't fully understand it. As ethics, there is another component with ethics. We see with ethics that they've been around. Ethics and the concept of ethics and behavior management is a very nuanced philosophical area that has been around for hundreds of years. Okay, we've studied codes, we've studied philosophers, we've studied modern thinkers. And from all of that information, we have a whole bunch of varied disciplines for ethics. We have business ethics, legal ethics. Most folks understand that in these different disciplines of ethics, there are guiding principles for behavior, expectations. And in most of our civilization, we as the consumer get to make some determinations here. So in society, the producer produces and they have a responsibility to a point. The consumer then consumes, and at what point the consumer is responsible for the product, we kind of make some determinations about that in society. There's some obligations, of course, upon the producer. There's some obligations upon the consumer. And where those things meet and overlap is sometimes subject to discipline ethics that say, hey, these are the behaviors that we're going to promote. Sometimes they're subjected to, say, legal rules. And there's always been legal rules around a variety of topics that are perfectly legal, even to include sugar and nutrition. We have disclaimers, we have consumption age, and things of that nature when it comes to, say, alcohol and tobacco. So there have been a variety of different areas in which laws have stepped forward to partner what is a behavior expectation with what also a legal expectation is. Right now, I feel that there's a little bit of a void, of course. The legal expectations are not there, and we're still trying to hone through this very rapid upon most of society advancement of AI. And so creating that definition for ethics within artificial intelligence, particularly when it touches so many different disciplines, there right now is no universal understanding of what that's going to look like across the disciplines. There's also no universal benchmark for what is considered responsible AI. So the question remains whether or not AI is going to help or harm society. And of course, the research balances out both positively and negatively for artificial intelligence. We see some very stark research in terms of demanding a universal definition of ethics based on, say, human dignity, with stark punishment for violations to that. So that's some stark kind of some negative research in that area. And then the research moves into social concerns and implications. Obviously, consumer threats. Our consumers are in the research shows that consumers are definitely more impacted by discrimination. They're more impacted by online harm or surrendering of personal identification, maybe because they inputted information that they didn't fully understand, or perhaps because the information was retrieved from them in a way that maybe wasn't ethical. And so the research is stark in that way. It's also very positive in areas of, say, for example, scientific research. We have an explosion of scientific research in terms of weather, in mapping, environmental science. We had a great presentation today on how AI was able to support some of the seagrass that our student presenter talked about, and support the research around that. We have areas for medical research and how AI is supporting. There's some great positive research on skin cancer and early detection. So obviously AI has some mixed results, but from a positive standpoint, we are seeing that it is helping research be conducted much quicker, and definitely exploding on the scientific level. And then maybe honing in on some of the areas that we can restrain behaviors, particularly if it falls outside of what we might consider as acceptable. That's where we get into the ethics area. Some other really interesting research is possibly allowing the AI to grow and learn and develop on its own, and develop its own autonomous agency, and then tell us for itself what ethical AI is. I think that's an interesting discussion that's going around in the research, and it will be interesting to see what happens with that. I don't know if for me that seems a bit neutral right now. I'm neither positive nor negative to the thought of AI developing its own agency and telling me what ethical AI is, but I certainly think it's very curious and very interesting to study. And I think if anything, that's what I'm looking at. The lens through this is just pure curiosity and interest in where we can go with this, particularly in how do we answer critical questions to our students about what is considered ethical, and then therefore what is considered ethical AI. So I decided that I was going to take my research questions and I was going to do a document analysis. And what I did was a grounded theory document content analysis. I used this approach because I felt it was very sensitive to the documents. It was reflexive, it was reflective. It was a means by which I believe an average consumer could go out and retrieve documents. And if they were to go out and retrieve information, what might they glean from that? And so that is why I chose this approach. And as I worked through search engines and I parsed through hundreds and hundreds of documents, I was very careful to exclude any document that was, say, a news article or oriented to some kind of news production of some sort. I excluded niche businesses, niche organization documentation, and things of that nature. I used indicators that excluded anything that didn't include stuff around artificial intelligence and ethics. So I worked really hard on that. And what I did too, to really hone in on influential organizations, because I wanted to stay away from news articles or just information from isolated industries, such as just information coming from a tech industry, for example. I influential influential characteristics and organizations for me meant that the documents had to include 4 or more indicators and be influentially known for notoriety, a public persona, recognizability, responsibility, authenticity, and impact. And from that, what's really great about a document analysis is that you focus on the quality of the documents, not the quantity. And I was able to discern from this search, with my exclusions and my exclusions, 5 very good quality documents. One was a presidential executive order on AI. The second one was the DoD data AI strategy publication. A third was an internationally acclaimed university publication on AI. The fourth document was a business manufacturing document covering areas of implementation in factories, for example. And the fifth document was the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization document, UNESCO's publication on AI ethics. So I really was able to gather really great quality documents to conduct my research. In all, I had 219 pages of documents and over 1,300 mentions directly connecting ethics and AI together. So what I did with this information was I used technology, and this was the first time having been raised up in some of the more old school traditional methods of using Post-it notes and carefully sifting through absolute papers surrounding me all the time. Instead, I put the items, these 5 documents, into Atlas TI. It was a really wonderful program. It comes in 2 versions. It comes in the web-based or the desktop app. I can't speak to the desktop app. I didn't use that platform, but I did use the web-based, and it was very easy to use. The color coding was very, very nice. It offers organization of all the documents and the coding process. It's very easy to toggle back and forth between passages and quotes. The coding process was very easy. I could go from document to document very easily, unlike having to go through pages and pages of documents in the past. The Atlas TI program did make that very easy. What's notable about the Atlas TI program is it offers 2 functions. It offers a research-led capacity where you can do the manual coding yourself. That is what I used. It also has AI-enabled capacities to help a researcher streamline their coding, streamline summarization of documents, etc. I would be interested to try that in the future, or perhaps to do another study or this study again, utilizing the AI-enabled features and see if there's something different. But I did not use that in this feature. So I do believe that the Atlas TI program helped me conceptualize the different categories and really weed through the information in a more reflexive way. It can be very exhausting to code documentation when you have hundreds of papers, and it's much harder to go through them. I felt that being reflective and taking lots of breaks is always necessary in the coding process, but while using this program, I felt like it was much quicker to do that and to recover and to continually stay reflective and reflexive as I read through passages and coded everything. So what did I end up with? When I was done reading through every passage and categorizing, I had categories, subcategories. I started to see themes emerge. When it was all said and done, I ended up with 3 themed groups that focused on the different number of occurrences for each category. And the 3 themed groups were the key features in ethical AI definition, contribution in AI ethical definition, and supportive terms in AI ethical definition. And from that, each one of those areas had a total of 13 different categories. The first 5, responsible, safe, and secure, strategic testing, collaboration, and governance, had 31 plus or more occurrences of coding throughout the documents, and they were part of the key features theme group. Contribution was the next 4, and then the last final was supportive terms categories. I'm going to tell you a little bit about particularly the key features theme group here. So as you can see in the funnel diagram there on the left, the category occurrences between responsible and safe and secure were tied. Those were the 2 predominant categories in coding of information that I was able to glean out for what lent itself towards either directly or indirectly towards defining ethical AI. I wanted to know, however, which one was more powerful. So I did a co-code occurrence analysis with each of the categories and found that the tie between responsible and safe and secure was broken, and that responsible overtook safe and secure. So you can see on the right, the Pareto chart tells you there what the co-code occurrence analysis is for responsible according to the other categories. Obviously, high was safe and secure, and then it diminishes almost nothing by the time you get to explainable, and nothing with consent, which, as you can see, is not surprising, given that explainable and consent were very low in the funnel chart to the left. I did a cross-document, cross-categories analysis as well. And you can see on the Sankey diagram on the left, I used the key features theme group, which was like I mentioned, the first 5 categories: responsible, safe and secure, strategic testing, collaboration, and governance. And I weighted them against all 5 documents. And there was some interesting analysis that I was able to glean from that. So 4 of the categories were present in all 5 of the papers, and that's collaboration, governance, strategic testing, and safe and secure. And you can see that there. Document 1, the executive order document, had the strongest showing across all of the categories. Document 4, however, my manufacturing document, had the weakest showing across all the categories. I'm not particularly surprised in that, because the document itself focused most on implementation of within factories, and supporting more of the hard skills and technical skills. So I don't think I'm surprised to see that there was less occurrences within that document. Responsible was completely absent in document 4. And again, like I mentioned, document 4 is the manufacturing document. So whether or not it's mentioned in another document for that organization or not, I wouldn't be able to speak to that. What I could say, though, is that, again, responsible in and of itself has its own characteristics. And so perhaps one of the things about document analysis is a limitation, is that it only focuses on that key moment in time. It's a snapshot. It does not represent an organization's total and complete value system, belief system, or practices. And so certainly I wouldn't make any judgment calls one way or another on that. It simply was very interesting to me to not see it present, considering that responsible was the strongest category overall. You can see a notable thing as well. In terms of the overall categories on the right-hand side, you'll see that consent was only present in 1 document. It was the lowest in the funnel chart of all the categories, and it was only present in actually 1 document, and that was the university document. I found that both reassuring and also a little upsetting. That I would have originally supposed consent to be a higher concern, or a higher word that might be used, a category that might have been coded higher. But instead, I see that that was predominant in the university document and not at all present in the others. So answering of my questions, what I was able to do is use this information to say, yes, I do believe that high levels of organization of influence clearly articulate what ethical AI is through shared terminology. Okay, not overtly, but rather through shared terminology. And I see that in the key features theme group: responsible, safe, and secure, strategic testing, collaboration, and governance. I do believe there's shared terminology out there that can lend us in higher education towards what are we going to do about defining ethical AI. Is ethical AI a predominant concern of organizations of influence? Yes, I would say so. I do believe from the evidence of these documents, at least within the narrow scope of this research, that organizations are thoughtful and intentional and meaningful around AI exploration. And I think that we can glean that there's definitely some predominant concern about using language, at least, that we would attribute to ethical AI. I would say that consent, however, needs some further exploration, and why it was so low and only present in 1 document. I would like to explore that more, and perhaps that has to do with that consent In the digital age, for example, how many folks just download a new app within a minute and it says, go ahead and accept, you consent to all these terms, and you scroll through it as quick as possible and you click the accept or the consent button, and we just move forward, never reading the disclaimers or the rules. And that's become a very common practice. And I wonder if the idea of consent then is a very different idea and very different notion among the technology industry, maybe among the average consumer, than it has traditionally been. So I'd like to do some more exploration around that. And then third, lastly, can a consolidated definition of ethical AI be discerned from the publications of organization of influence? I said no, I didn't think so. And mostly with the caveat that ethics is very difficult. I think it's premature in the development of AI and the limited scope of this research to make such a bold claim, and I wouldn't want to do that. I definitely want to be open-minded to more research, and I want the round table of discussion to include a lot of folks, particularly higher ed, as we identify what does ethics mean, and how do we apply that then to artificial intelligence. So if then we don't have a consolidated definition of ethical AI, what do we have? I believe we have a roadmap. I think we have a roadmap. The key features theme group to me highlights that the categories responsible, safe, and secure, strategic testing, collaboration, and governance are essential in defining ethical AI. I think these are characteristics that influential documentation showcase. I'd like to see what other documentation showcase, but I think that these categories absolutely help us and where we go in supporting our students. I think that with the top two tied categories, and of course the highest being responsible in the code analysis, I would say responsible and safe and secure, right? Responsibility and security. These are just characteristics that I think the average individual thinks of on a daily basis anyway, regardless of whether it's AI or anything else. So responsibility and security are things that we value. And so it is not surprising to me that that would be something we would associate in any way whatsoever with ethical AI, this sense of being responsible and this sense of security. I did think it was really interesting and very hopeful to see that collaboration, governance, and strategic testing had large numbers of occurrences within the two government documents that I had, the executive order and the DoD document. I thought that was really, really positive. And particularly in the terms of collaboration, it appears to me through those documentations that they're working hard and that collaboration is valuable. That is a message for us in higher education to partner with our government partners and sit down with them at the table. Technology individuals should not be the only individuals at the table. It should be government sitting down to talk with higher ed, to talk with technology, to talk with regular consumers. And we should have a roundtable discussion more clearly on what ethical AI looks like. And it was very positive for me to see that the government interest in collaboration had a high number of occurrences in the categories. Consumers of AI definitely require protection. They are at a greater risk of loss of personal information. They're at a greater risk of discrimination online and receiving harmful content. Obviously, young consumers, we want to be mindful of them as well. There are benefits, however, to our consumers. Ideally, if businesses are able to lower their overhead for business costs, hopefully and ideally, then those lowered costs will be passed on to the consumer. So I think there's some potential financial benefits both for business and consumers. Autonomous AI, however, is something that I think the idea that autonomous AI would develop its own agency and then broadcast what its own definition of ethical AI, while interesting and curious, I think we have a profound gap here in our own community and our own understanding for what ethical AI is. And so I think I would not be on board yet to I guess, to digest autonomous AI having its own agency for defining ethical AI. I really think too, higher ed has some great opportunity here. Partnering with businesses to find out what the hard skills and technical skills are um, is something that higher ed can do. But when it comes to having our students go into the workforce understanding what ethical AI is, or even ethical technology practices as a whole, I think higher ed has an opportunity to build into the student pathway, perhaps modules or micro credentialing or uh, small assessments of some sort that give the student a token along the way for each of the particular components of what might ethical AI look like. For example, if we determine that responsible is something that's important, perhaps a micro module or a micro credential built into the student pathway on responsible AI use. That could be something that the students collect along their student journey so that when they leave and go into the workforce, they have almost a collection of badges, a collection of modules and micro credentials that they could show to an employer that they are a responsible AI user, responsible technology user. They are a safe and secure user, and they are a collaborative user. And so perhaps we have an opportunity in higher ed to rethink how we are producing our pathways, our education courses for students, and embed ethical concepts along the way. I think another thing we might want to consider in terms of ethical AI bridges all of the disciplines. AI is in everything. It's in business, in medicine, in research. And so if each of these disciplines have their own idea of ethics, business ethics, legal ethics, for example, and we want there to be an ethical AI understanding across everything, universal, perhaps we need to pivot on language. And if we were to determine that society, for example, valued the word responsible over the word ethical, and they understood that more, perhaps that roundtable discussion and further research on pivoting the conversation could be something that is an opportunity for higher ed. For me, I believe that higher ed has to be at the table. We have to not allow technology to dictate to us what this landscape is going to look like. I want it to be a collaborative effort between technology, higher ed, the average consumer, and of course, some government background and support in that nature. So, with that, I will thank you very much and be happy to take any questions. And this is my proposal in terms of helping higher ed have a seat at the table in defining ethical artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.
Terry, that's a fascinating study and an
Thank,
incredible amount of work.
thank you.
I find it fascinating, actually. I'm just, are there questions? I'll give people a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Getting lots of kudos. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Someone posits this. Is it possible to have, quote, ethical AI, unquote? After all, artificial intelligence is hardly intelligent, let alone ethical. AI is only intelligent because of the intelligence that intelligent or cruel people feed into its storage. Can AI be deemed sentient to be ethical, or are we overly anthropomorphizing AI? So
That
there's a
is,
philosophical question.
yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think you're honing in onto something I was circling around, which is um, we in society struggle with even understanding what ethics are. We have breach of ethics all the time in a variety of different disciplines. What's to say we won't have a breach of ethics in AI as well, even if we do manage to collectively define it? Um, yeah, I think as humans, we already struggle with this as a concept. We struggle, one, with the concept of artificial intelligence. How is it really intelligent? I mean, what really is it, right? And how much can it do? How much can it not do? We're still learning it about it. So we have huge gaps in our knowledge in terms of that. Quite frankly, we also have huge gaps in our knowledge about ethics. That's why I think perhaps one of the things I was circling around too is that maybe what we need to do is pivot language. And we need to maybe think that maybe the word ethical bears too much of a heavy, almost humanistic, giving it a humanistic quality that it does not have. And maybe instead we do need to pivot the language towards, say, responsible AI or something a little bit more clear cut. I think that's a great question, and I'm circling around that as well. Thank you.
Well, I have a question. I would pin a question to that. Are we really talking about the ability to put safety features, ethical safety features into AI?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That and that concern has arisen from situations where, for example, the somewhat now famous situation where uh, Amazon had discrimination
mm-hmm,
in uh, sifting resumes with AI because human bias was inadvertently built in to
mm-hmm,
the AI system.
mm-hmm,
I mean, the AI didn't care if somebody was female or male
mm-hmm,
or of a certain race, but into the algorithm, some sort of bias
mm-hmm,
had crept in.
mm-hmm.
I see another question here. In your research, were you able to find opportunities for educators to use tools to decipher student misuse, such as cheating?
No, my research did not focus on that. However, I would say that by extension, what I would do with my own students, particularly, is I would really highlight the two key categories at the top: being responsible and being safe and secure. And I think those are qualities that kind of are universal. They're real human qualities. But when utilizing programs, for example, or if they're cheating with ChatGPT, I might hone in on some key life skills such as being responsible or being safe and secure. Great question.
Well, we've got just 1 minute left. Just to put a bow on this AI and ethical AI, we are seeing a little bit of what people are programming into it. For example, you can ask just looking at the generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask it some things that it will not answer. It will
Mm-hmm.
say, I can't answer that question. That's a question that is not appropriate for me to answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, that's an ethical answer. I mean, an
Yeah.
ethically framed, in terms of language,
Mm-hmm.
an ethically framed answer. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the AI thinking for itself sentiently. Someone used the word sentient, which is a wonderful way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what it is doing is its programming has enough nuance in it for it to respond the way the ethical human programming has trained it to respond.
Yeah, I
Where
like you honed on to nuance. I love how you use that word. Yeah.
so so that means that we can build ethical
Mhm.
framework into AI, but it's still, the burden is on humans
Yes.
to do that and not rely on the AI.
Mhm.
I mean, we know
Absolutely.
about hallucination. That can
Big
take it,
problem. Yeah.
that can take it into a walk on the wild side that nobody intended. I mean, you still have to interpret what you're getting.
Mhm.
What a awesome uh, presentation. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's here, and for your great questions that you've posted. We are at the 5 o'clock hour. So TGIF, wishing everybody a wonderful weekend. We have our closing session. We invite you to please join us for that. And Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.